What's up? How's it going, people? Welcome in, cozy up, grab yourself a hot drink and settle in. In this spoilercast, I'm going to discuss the story of Death Stranding, and trust me, it's absolutely bonkers. Kojima really put all his quirks into this one, and I personally loved it. If you have played this game, this will make more sense to you, but just in case you haven't, I'll try and be as descriptive as I can for all the terminology that I will use. For the spoilercasts on this channel, I like them to be a more informal outing than my reviews, previews and analysis. It's effectively a chat amongst friends and gamers alike. So if you enjoy this style of content, why don't you give me a like and subscribe, and I'll keep making them. But without further ado, let's take a peek into Hideo Kojima's mind. This game starts with Sam riding his cool hog down a highway before Fragile just appears in the middle of the road and he skids and loses his bike and his cargo. Who is this mysterious woman with an impractically shaped umbrella? Sam is, of course, Norman Reedus, and Fragile is played by Léa Seydoux. It starts raining and Sam's suit reacts to shield him. It pops up this little hood to protect his head, and then within this section we get to see our first glimpses of BTs as handprints start to emerge in the ground and emphasize that this is an invisible threat. At least for now. The acronym BT stands for Beach Thing, and they were this game's main enemy. I didn't even know they were called Beach Things until I dived into the lore post-credits. BTs are souls of people that haven't fully crossed to the world of the dead. They are stranded, good title Kojima, in the world of the living through an umbilical cord that passes through the beach. I'm gonna say right now, there's a lot of umbilical cords in this game. The beach, in summary from what I could understand, is a place that exists in between the world of the living and the dead, and each person has their own beach that they go to when they die. Some people can travel to other people's beaches, but we'll get to them later. Sam then consequently takes shelter in a cave and starts to strip down. Ooh la la. He reveals his bare skin to us and we see that he has handprints all over his body. Sam has a condition called, and please excuse my pronunciation as I'm not sure this is even a real word, aphenphosmophobia, which effectively means whoever touches him leaves their mark due to an allergic reaction. The woman he nearly hit with his hog, Fragile, appears in the cave, and they have another encounter with a couple of BTs in which they both hold their breath to avoid, alluding to the main mechanic moving forward of holding your breath to stealth past these enemies. Fragile and Sam talk about their dooms, which is a condition just thrown loosely at this early stage of the game because as a player you have literally no fucking idea what any of this means. Dooms comes at different levels and allows people to have some kind of interaction with BTs as they have a stronger connection to the beach. We learn in turn that Sam can sense BTs but they are invisible to him. However, Fragile can actually see them. She can also teleport by using her beach to move about, indicating she has a much higher level of dooms than Sam. They then both look towards the sky to see shadows of people suspended in the air, which, looking back on it, I assume is the new souls of the dead just before they turn into BTs, but I'm not completely sure. Sam and Fragile both cry at this point, and there's a lot of crying in this game. My dumbass assumed it was because everyone was sad all the time due to this dreary on the brink of collapse world, but after some research I have since discovered that it's actually a side effect of having dooms, which makes much more sense than my previous thought. This then ends the opening cutscene. Yeah, you heard it right, the opening cutscene. The amount of lore Kojima dumps here is completely insane, and I personally had no idea what was going on, but I was so drawn in by every minute detail that I was just yearning to learn more about this world and all those quirky aspects. And really, that's what I wanted to do this spoilercast for, to educate you all on the lore and the story of this game, because there are lots of words and things that happen that really are quite inexplicable at times. Finally, having control of the sticks, your objective is to pick up your dropped cargo and carry it to your destination at Central Knot City. This highlights two things. One, Sam is a delivery man in this world, known as porters. And two, every main city in this game is reflected as a knot. So if you hear me referring to knots, that's what the cities and or towns are called. Sam being a porter is of course crucial to not only the story but also the gameplay, as people, you're going to be delivering a lot of parcels in this game. Upon entering Central Knot City for the delivery, we get a glimpse of the technology this world has. Everything is sparse and clinical. As I mentioned in my review, I did like this design. It made everything look fresh and clean. The two main interactions are with the delivery terminals and the private rooms. The delivery terminal is what we need in this situation, and if I remember correctly, this is where we see Mama, played by Margaret Qualley, pop up for the first time. Mama is a techie and supplies us with most of our gadgets, but she is also a very interesting character. You'll have to wait until we reach chapter 5 for that storyline though. After dropping off this cargo, what would be the next logical step for a porter in this world? A corpse disposal, of course. The corpse disposal team shows up in a truck with a corpse and Sam jumps in. What makes corpse disposal so important in this world is due to the Death Stranding and links, the beaches and the BTs. Oh, I love a lore dump, and it is so rich in this game. When somebody dies, their soul gets trapped in between the living and dead worlds, as I explained earlier. In that initial stage, the soul seeks to return to the body. They call it the heart and car. The heart being the physical body and the car being the soul. The heart is tethered to the car, presumably by Kojima's favourite biological part, an umbilical cord. However, what makes this dangerous is when the soul that should be a part of the dead world touches the physical body of the living world, it causes something called a void out. I'm no physicist, but the word entropy comes to mind. The void out is effectively a massive explosion, and you pass many craters on your travel through the story that indicate such void outs. In light of all this, you can understand why corpse disposals are so important. Sam, joining this team, notices that the main dude on the back has a baby strapped to his chest. The iconic baby that set us all into a state of confusion when we first saw it in the trailers. They are officially called bridge babies, or BBs for short. BBs are a tool and are connected to the suit of a human through, you guessed it, an umbilical cord. BBs can sense the world of the dead and therefore BTs. I think this is because they are removed from their mother's womb when they die or something like that. There's a whole background to them such that they never age, the pod they live in is to simulate a womb, and all that funky stuff. In summary, BBs connect to the porter's scanner and can show them where BTs are, making them a very useful tool. During this disposal mission, the team gets caught in a timefall, which is rain or snow, in this case rain, and what it does is it ages everything it touches. In terms of the gameplay, this affects your cargo and you have to plan around it, but in terms of the world building, it means that humans have to wear these protective suits. That's why we saw Sam's hood pop up earlier, and it's also where BT seem to come out. What happens when timefall touches your skin? Well, Fragile is going to tell us all about that shortly. The team gets ambushed by BTs, and the other two get killed, eaten, touched, but just before the guy explodes into a void out, he manages to throw Sam the little baby pod. Then, kaboom. And the prologue ends with a bang. A lot of lore and terminology is used in the prologue, which is such a risky move, especially for a new IP, but Kojima knew he would attract people like me, and presumably you guys, to the wackiness and intrigue of it. Then you get nerds like me scanning the internet for every morsel I can find, and you guys here listening to me blabber on about it. Anyway, on to the first chapter of the game. Sam awakens in one of the private rooms in Capital Knot City, and he's got handcuffs on. No, not the sexy kind. These handcuffs are a tool which we later learn were developed by Mama that links everyone in the system. Sam uses it for his map and his communications. Basically a phone, but for your wrist. Very stylish. This is where we are first introduced to Deadman. Deadman, portrayed by Guillermo del Toro, but voiced by Jesse Corti, is a scientist/physician under Bridges. Bridges is the company formed by the collective to reunite and rebuild America. Sam is part of the Bridges delivery team as a porter, hence his quite literal name, Sam Porter Bridges, just in case you forget what to do and where you're from. And now, I've detoured away from the story again. It is so easy to get sidetracked with the lore of this game. Deadman himself is an interesting character as he initially states that he is a man made of many cadavers, i.e. dead people. We later find this to be only partly true, but it is interesting nonetheless. The main thing about Deadman is he was born artificially through scientific methods, and therefore he doesn't have a soul. This also means he doesn't have a beach. This leads him to be deadly interested in people with doom specifically, and therefore takes a shine to Sam, and even says within our first meet that he's already taken samples of us. That cheeky bastard. Anyway, Deadman informs us that Central Knot City was destroyed by the void out we witnessed, and only Sam and the BB survived. Sam survived due to him being a repatriate. Repatriates basically can revive themselves from death by pulling their soul back to their bodies, their car to their heart. I think Sam is the only one, or at least the only one we meet in the game. Deadman says he is currently caring for the President of the United Cities of America, and we must deliver morphine to her. Then he disappears as he's just a hologram, obviously. Taking the morphine over to the White House equivalent of the Death Stranding world, we find the President in her deathbed, portrayed by Lindsay Wagner. Bridget is her name, and she is revealed to be Sam's mum, and boy does she have a lot to say to us. Just before she does though, we meet, or are reacquainted with I suppose would be the more fitting term here, Die Hardman. No kidding, that's his name, Die Hardman. He is a real hard man I guess, as he wears a pretty sleek skull mask, for a reason we learn about later. He is portrayed by Tommy Earl Jenkins. All we need to know about Die Hardman for now is that he is the right-hand man to President Bridget Strand and will be the main talking point for Sam's missions throughout the game. Back to Bridget. She commands everyone to leave to talk to Sam, and we get another story dump here which also includes Mummy mounting Sammy in a pretty scary way. She tells Sam he must go on a mission to unify America as everyone must come together for humanity to survive. That trope, eh? To do this, you must assist your sister Amelie, also played by Lindsay Wagner but with a young face, with her mission to move west, reconnecting the knots as you go. Mother President then meets her maker, meaning that before we can do anything, Sam needs to carry his dead mum on his back in a body bag to an incinerator to avoid blowing up the whole city. If you were feeling shortchanged from the corpse disposal mission in the prologue, well, now you get it. Just with your own mother. If dead mum is not enough, why not throw a fetus on the bonfire too? Well, Dead Man surely thinks so as he throws a faulty BB from the prologue your way to also take to the incinerator. Oh Kojima, I love you. This is the longest stretch of walking you would have had in the opening hours of this game, and honestly I thought it was beautiful. Lush green landscapes, a low roar song, and Mum's corpse flopping side to side. Very peaceful. After making it to the cremation station, Sam successfully disposes of Bridget's corpse, but can't bring himself to destroy the BB, and so this is where we are first united with Lou, the bridge baby. This couldn't be more perfect timing as timefall occurs and BTs swarm in. Plugging into little Lou, Sam manages to navigate his way around this threat and back to Capital Knot City. Just before Chapter 1 ends, in the closing moments we get to see a flashback from the perspective of a bridge baby, and it is where we see Clifford Unger for the first time, portrayed by Mads Mikkelsen. Cliff has multiple chapters just focused on him, and he is a crucial part of the story, so you will hear his name come up often. Chapter 2 is titled Amelie, and I'll give you 3 guesses on who Sam meets back in Central Knot. Bingo, it's Amelie, who just so happens to now be the new president. Amelie effectively explains what Bridget outlined in more detail. We must connect the remaining knots using a device called a Cupid, which will connect those people to the bridge's chiral network. Once America is reconnected on the chiral network, everyone can interact with each other and share information, crafts and supplies. A happy ending for all, even though you know there are literal terrors suspended between life and death roaming the land. That's neither here nor there though, it seems. Sam's sister continues and explains she has been captured and held prisoner, therefore Sam must try and get to her at the same time. Luckily, and obviously for story fluidity purposes, Amelie just so happens to be held captive at the very last and furthest location Sam needs to visit on his journey. Sam accepts begrudgingly as the game would end here if he didn't, and off he goes at the beginning of his adventure. The rest of episode 2 is basically finishing up the last tutorial bits like doing proper deliveries, building structures, infiltrating mule camps, and all the core gameplay systems. During this, Sam will connect all the knots on the eastern side of the map, and just before he takes a boat onto the central area, you fight a boss BT. Different from the others as these ones are seemingly controlled by Higgs. First off, they are visible, second off, they are gigantic. There is always this cool biome change whenever you fight one of these boss BTs and the world becomes covered in thick black liquid. You casually dispose of this enemy using weapons and grenades that are filled with Sam's blood. Turns out Sam's blood and waste materials are killing tools for BTs specifically. Don't forget to carry around some blood bags and visit the shower or toilet in your private room to get more waste extracted. Man, what a gloriously weird fucking game. Now, I mentioned Higgs, as he turns up here before he summons the big BT. Played by the video game industry's most illustrious voice actor, Troy Baker. Higgs is our main antagonist in this game. He shows up with his gold skull mask and rain poncho looking all badass, and he reminds me a bit of the Joker in that he seems to only exist to see the world burn. We learn more about his intentions later, and I will look at that when I return to Amelie. For now, he teleports around much like Fragile, but also can control BTs, which indicates he has a deeper level of dooms than both Fragile and Sam, probably combined. Higgs is powerful and definitely a threat. I thought his character model and presence in the game were very well designed. We know he's back in Death Stranding 2, so we'll get to see what antics he gets up to later this year, him and that snazzy new electric guitar of his. Sam boards a boat to leave the newly connected eastern part of America behind and sails towards the central part to kick off episode 3. This episode is titled Fragile, and she pings into existence to join you on your little marine expedition. It is worth noting here that Sam once again caresses a picture of him and his presumable wife that he hides in his suit. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but it isn't the first time in the game we see this picture, and we do get a background check on Sam's story later. Episode 3 is similar to episode 2 in that it's a considerable amount of delivering and connecting knots, but from a story perspective, we hear a lot about Fragile and her connection with Higgs. Turns out they used to be business partners, and he is the reason that Mrs. Funky Umbrella zips herself in leather from head to toe. Higgs' betrayal of Fragile is pretty deep, and you can tell how destroyed she is by it and how much genuine hatred she has for this guy. Trust me, he's an arsehole. Turns out he abused Fragile's freight company to deliver a bomb to one of the cities in the central region and blow it up. If you think that's messed up, it gets worse. He attempts to deliver another one to one of the other major cities, but Fragile manages to foil his plan on that one. He captures her and gives her a choice. Let the bomb destroy the city, or run pretty much naked through Timefall to expose of the bomb in the tar pits. Remember how Timefall ages everything it touches? Well, we get this epic cutscene of Fragile running in her underwear with a protective hood on her head, bomb in hand, skin slowly aging. While this was sick to watch, it was super messed up. Fragile's body is completely aged and wrinkled apart from her face, and hence why she's completely covered in leather. This was one of the strongest character arcs for me. I really like Fragile's character and I just wish we saw more of her in the game. I'm glad to see her return in the second one. After this point, until the end of the game, she basically becomes a tool for fast travel. Very artistic to use a whole character as a means of fast travel, and I also love it when developers combine their very gamey mechanics with the world lore. Remember when I said Higgs is an arsehole? Well, he shows his true colours for a second time as he tricks Sam into a bomb delivery in an attempt to successfully blow up the same city he tried to get Fragile to destroy many years before. Sam is a wise nut though and disposes of it in the tar pits, thankfully with his clothes still on. It's important to mention at this point before I jump into chapter 4 that pretty much every instance you leave a private room in chapter 2 and 3 you get a short cinematic from a BB's perspective of Clifford Unger, Mads Mikkelsen's character if you can't remember who that is. He's usually talking to a BB and his sadly brain dead wife, or talking about how he's going to take him places, or some scenes look like he's stealing the BB and running away. Turns out this part is actually true, as we find out in the latter chapters. The reason I mention this now is because chapter 3 ends with Sam being swept into a chiral hurricane tornado thing and landing in what looks like World War II trenches. Mads Mikkelsen rises from black goop dressed like an army veteran with a squad of fighters. He magically snaps his fingers to make a burning cigarette appear in his hand, which is super cool, but he also does some crazy shit in this cutscene. Like what, I hear you ask? Well, like lying in a spider's web of creepy baby dolls that remind me of that horror toy from Toy Story. Yeah, it's really weird. The screen reads chapter 4 Unger. This chapter is super short and you really just run around shooting enemies in attempts to defeat Cliff. The main takeaways are that Cliff served in the army and he is willing to kill to get his BB back. Is Lou actually Cliff's BB? Well, that's the real question, isn't it? Back in reality, through some dialogue between characters, it seems that Sam has only been unconscious for a few seconds, meaning that when he's with Cliff on presumably his beach, time moves at a different rate. This is something I will refer back to when we get to chapter 8 and talk about Hartman. I'm getting ahead of myself though, as we are just about to start chapter 5 Mama. Now, this chapter was one of my favourites simply because of the story of Margaret Qualley's character Mama. Mama, so far to us, has been the techie. She made the cufflinks, I think she also made the auto delivery bot, amongst other things. One of those things being the Cupid that we are using to reconnect America. Mama calls and indicates that the increased chiral density that just caused the storm Sam was sucked into could be a result of this reconnecting people to the network, and so she wants to give him a newly designed Cupid. Off we go to see Mama. Cue one of my favourite cutscenes in the whole game. As Sam walks into Mama's workshop, the lights cut out and his sensor springs into life. Baby cries ring out and then little tiny handprints start to appear on the ceiling. It's a fucking BT baby. Mama runs out and coos the BT and settles it, and we can see this faint umbilical cord that attaches Mama to it. The baby BT is not connected to the living world through a beach, but it is directly connected to Mama. The reason for this is terrorists attacked the hospital when Mama was having a C-section, and the baby died while she survived, and so it tethered to her physical body. We get a really sad flashback of Mama being trapped in the rubble calling out for help. This is absolutely insane, but it's so creative, and what other story can you say that you've seen a dead baby attached to its mother via a ghostly umbilical cord, but it's not some psycho horror, it's actually sad. Bravo, Kojima, bravo. Mama gives Sam the new Cupid, but she sends you to see someone called Lochner up in the snowy mountains for the software part. The mountains take up a large part of the middle of the game, as we spend 3 chapters here and it takes a little longer to traverse due to the rough terrain. I do think it was the area I found most therapeutic though, as scaling the mountains and seeing the sunshine, dragging some packages behind me on the little cargo trolley, just felt so cozy. Once we reach the city in the mountains and find Lochner, she looks very familiar. Turns out she is Mama's estranged twin sister. She isn't very cooperative, and in order to get the software for the Cupid, Sam must reconnect Mama and Lochner. We also find out that Mama's real name is Melingan. Returning to Mama/Melingan, she has a fancy new gadget for Sam, a sweet umbilical cord cutter. This is used to sever the ties that BTs have with the living world and forces them back to the dead world. To test it out, Mama says it's time to say goodbye to her dead baby, and so you sever the tie. This was pretty emotional, and the acting by Margaret Qualley here was really incredible. The most obvious next step for Mama after killing her baby for what I suppose is the second time is to bag and tag her. When Sam has Melingan on his back, we set off for the mountain, not city again, but Higgs attacks us upon leaving the lab with another super BT, presumably because he doesn't want this new Cupid to avert another Death Stranding or whatever. Running away is best here, so off we go once again to the snowy mountains. Mama actually dies on arrival, as it turns out her connection to the baby was the only thing keeping her alive, but in a strange twist, her soul actually bonds with that of Lochner's, and they live on together in the same body. Lochner says this quote regarding their names: "Melingan and I were named after a pair of craters left by meteors which struck the Earth 450 million years ago. Those craters are proof that this planet is part of something bigger, that we exist with a vast interconnected universe. Our names serve as a reminder of this fundamental truth, symbols of our parents' hope that our isolation is only temporary." This line is so impactful and explains why the two sisters Haas bonded together when Melingan's car died. Or is it car to ha? I forget which way round it is. It also turns out that these craters exist in real life. They are both in Sweden, which is cool. Turns out the baby Melingan was carrying was actually a baby combined of Lochner's eggs and her dead partner's sperm, so she really loved her sister. After that emotional chapter, we turn our sights towards the big guy for chapter 6, Dead Man. The big guy barges into the private room when Sam is just trying to get some shut-eye. He grabs Lou and explains that he has to take the BB to reconfigure it, as it's straying too close to the world of living and becoming an actual child, which would make its usefulness as a tool disappear. There are some big lore drops here and a steamy shower scene where Deadman asks Sam to come in the shower with him as they can't be heard in there. He effectively says he doesn't trust Die Hardman and suspects there is something deeper going on there. Anyway, Sam has to deliver a bunch of packages now while Deadman fixes Lou, and that's pretty much it for chapter 6. It offers a slightly new playstyle as Sam is effectively blind to the BTs now without Lou to help him, so it gives a new challenge. Chapter 6 ends when you approach Deadman's meeting spot to get Lou back, but another chiral storm hits and sucks Deadman and Sam up in the vortex. Back into the trenches for chapter 7 titled Clifford. Sam seeks out Deadman and Lou and manages to reclaim the BB before fighting against Cliff and his skeleton army, much like chapter 4. I think the only other difference here is that Sam manages to get Cliff's dog tags at the end, which he then brings back to the living world, meaning that the crew now know this guy's name, Clifford Unger, who, after a quick Google search from someone, reads him as a US Army Special Forces captain. I don't actually mean Google search, but you know what I mean. We also found out what happened to the wife and child Sam had in the picture he keeps stroking. Turns out they all died in a void out, and presumably he came back to life due to his repatriation abilities. That is super depressing to think about, as he would have been there when they died and was the only one to come back. I don't blame him for being an introvert and not caring about reconnecting the world. However, it gets even more depressing as, researching it after I finished the game, it turns out the void out was caused by his wife actually committing suicide due to the fact that she couldn't deal with the Doom's nightmares that she was having due to carrying Sam's baby. It's super dark, but does give a whole explanation for Sam's characteristic nature. The unborn child they were planning to name Louise, hence Sam calling his current BB Lou, which also explains his attachment to it being more than a tool. Wipe those tears away as it's time to go back to the quirky with Chapter 8, Hartman. Now, Hartman is a character who popped up occasionally through the story on comms offering some insight, but I never really knew what his purpose was. Hartman is portrayed by Nicholas Winding Refn, the Danish director whose only film I've seen is Drive, which is great by the way, and voiced by Darren Jacobs. I suppose the best way to describe Hartman is as the Bridges' lead researcher of the beach. We are invited into his quite frankly cozy home in the mountains as he wants Sam to bring him Mama's corpse as she doesn't seem to be necrotizing. We take him that and an umbilical cord that has shown up, presumed to be Bridget's because, let's be honest, Kojima clearly doesn't want us to forget about the umbilical cords. What makes Hartman unique and quirky is the permanent defibrillator attached to his chest. His life exists in 24-minute segments, as every 21 minutes his heart stops and allows him to explore the beaches for 3 minutes until his defibrillator kicks in and brings him back to life. Now, as we learned earlier when Sam got sucked into Cliff's beach, is that the passage of time is very different on a beach, so even though Hartman is only on the beach for 3 minutes of real world time, it is actually more like hours or days on the beach itself. Hartman also has a progressed level of dooms which, much like Higgs, Sam and Amelie, allows him to travel to other people's beaches and not just his own. He uses this time to search for his dead daughter and wife, which once again brings something that is actually quite fun and quirky back to the dark and sad. A very common theme in Death Stranding is that everyone's outlook is pretty grim. Hartman theorizes that the importance of Mama not necrotizing and Bridget's umbilical cord is that both of their cells are packed with chiral density. Now, I don't really understand what this means, but he summarizes that this could mean that Bridget was an extinction entity, which means Amelie as her daughter is probably an extinction entity too. Now, because I'm struggling to say that so much, I will shorten it to EE. Cut to Chapter 9 Higgs. Now, if you've even kept up this far, you're probably like, hold up. What the hell is an extinction entity now? Hartman explains that there have been 5 mass extinction events in the past, where the world has effectively been destroyed and reborn. The dinosaurs and mammoths being used as 2 examples of this, which helps bring some context to our real world. EEs are the beings that bring around these extinctions, and turns out our dear Amelie is one. It's worth pointing out at this stage that most of our interactions with Amelie throughout the game have been on a beach, indicating that she could even be living there. Amelie is well aware that she is an EE, and that is a really heavy burden to bear. Sam finishes connecting the chiral network and reaches Amelie, who has been captured by Higgs. Ready for the first twist? Turns out that Sam reconnecting the chiral network was all part of Higgs' master plan, as he wants everyone to be connected so he can use everyone's newly connected beaches and Amelie's EE capacity to cause the final Death Stranding. The one true extinction which will just completely destroy all life as we know it. I don't really understand Higgs' motivations at all, so I stick to my Joker comparison in the sense that he just wants to watch the world burn, quite literally. There's a boss fight here where Higgs summons a colossal giant BT, which was a cool fight, and then on defeat he retreats to the beach with Amelie. Sam uses Fragile in order to get to Amelie's beach here as he can't travel there himself, and now there's a one-on-one fight with Higgs. At first Sam is just using his trusty strand rope against Higgs and his assault rifle, a literal sticks and stones situation. This then evolves into a fist fight in which Sam and Higgs are quite literally beating the shit out of each other. Kojima has designed this in a way where you really feel the weight and impact behind each punch. It was really great. Higgs is then left to Fragile's disposal, but she doesn't actually kill him like she originally said, as he's obviously in Death Stranding 2. I think she says at some point later in the game she thought a better fate for him was to leave him stranded on the beach. Stupid choice, but also one that doesn't make sense given his Doom's abilities, but whatever. Sam then saves Amelie and we head into the final throes of the game. Chapter 10, Die Hardman, is a short one, and basically Amelie and Sam have this very weird and out of vibe run montage across the beach, which reminded me of a pop punk music video. You won't ever see me questioning Kojima though. Once this montage is over, Sam sees Bridget and Die Hardman on the beach, in a scene I assume to be from the past, and they are approached by Clifford Unger. He, as usual, is demanding for his BB. We see Die Hardman break down into tears at this point, and he refers to Cliff as Captain, which shows us as the player that they obviously served together. There are also brief cutscenes where we are looking through the eyes of the BB that look like Die Hardman and Cliff talking in the hospital at earlier points in the game. Demanding his BB again, Bridget then points towards Sam and Lou, and Cliff sees them, causing Amelie to push Sam into repatriation so he gets sucked back into the living world. Sam's quest now is to make it all the way back east to the very start almost, which felt like a bit of a slog, especially considering you can't fast travel at this point, but whatever. Upon approaching his destination, another chiral storm happens once again, bringing us to Cliff's beach and leading to Chapter 11, Clifford Unger. This is our last interaction with Cliff's beach. Chapter 11, 12 and 13 all work better when I explain them together, as they are ultimately the tying story of the whole game. First off, we look at Cliff. Turns out he is not actually an evil dude, but someone who was completely wronged. His wife became brain dead during birth, meaning that his baby was a great candidate for the BB program, which Bridget forced upon him without explaining what that would mean. When he finally discovers what it means, he tries to steal BB back, and Die Hardman, who is working for Bridget at the time, gives him a head start due to their previous connection of serving together. Die Hardman holds Cliff with very high respect as he believes he owes him his life. Cliff escapes the facility with BB but ends up being cornered where Bridget, in a twist and reveal of true nature, commands Die Hardman to shoot Cliff and reclaim the BB. He refuses and Bridget knocks him, which causes 2 bullets to fire off, one killing Cliff and one killing his child. Bridget feels guilty and goes to the beach to find the baby that was killed. In this cutscene we see it is Amelie who approaches the baby, which reveals the other big twist. Amelie and Bridget are actually the same person, Bridget being the her and Amelie being the car. Amelie Bridget brings the baby back to life, which gives it repatriate abilities. And who do we know that has repatriate abilities? You got it, Mr. Sam Strand. Boom. Cliff is actually daddy, and him and Sam embrace in his final moments. Kinda sad now that we spent most of the game trying to kill him, isn't it? Bridget then adopts Sam and raises him, hence why she is referred to as his mum. Now for the real finale to the story. Sam approaches Amelie on her beach, and she offers him a choice to either watch the final stranding with her or to try and shoot her and stop her. This is because it is an inevitable consequence and something that she always has to usher in. She has been burdened with this, and after spending countless years on the beach, possibly even hundreds or thousands, she is too sad to keep it hanging and wants to get it over with. Sam opts for the third option, which, believe it or not, is a hug. A bloody hug. I thought this was so stupid, to be honest. It's explained in the Death Stranding wiki that this hug caused Amelie to see that Sam would always be there and that their bond would never be severed. It gives her hope that humanity can have time to evolve and fare better when the extinction does come. So she decides to stay in her solitude on the beach and delay the extinction further. All of that from a hug is completely reaching, to be honest, and I thought it was kind of a weak way to conclude such a strong and explosive plot point, but I still enjoy the story nonetheless. There is a really boring section of the game here where Sam is trapped on the beach and all the stuff I just explained is being portrayed in small cutscenes, and you kind of just walk about making them trigger until eventually you are found by Mama and manage to be brought back to the living world, which brings us to the final chapter of the game. Chapter 14, Lou, starts with Die Hardman giving his first speech as the new president of the UCA. There's some dialogue here with Deadman, which explains how they managed to find Sam on the beach, which was due to a revolver that used to be Cliff's but had Sam's blood bullets in, or something like that. Then there's some dialogue with Die Hardman, or John, which is his real name. He breaks down again and apologizes for his bad history. The interesting and important thing in this chapter is Deadman giving the pod of Lou back to Sam, and it seems that she is dead. Deadman says the baby will cause a void out if Sam does not incinerate it, but perhaps he should also try removing it from the pod to see if he can resuscitate it, even though that would be against the law. He disconnects Sam's cufflink as well in the process, as he says it will allow him to go off radar again if he so wishes. When reaching the incinerator, Sam initially puts the pod on, but then reclaims it at the last minute, removing Lou from the pod and managing to bring her back to life in a quite emotional scene that Norman Reedus performs excellently. He instead burns his cufflinks and walks away with his baby, now named Louise. Louise, of course, was the baby he lost when his wife died, so that's a nice positive change in fate for Sam finally. Louise is also seen in the trailers for Death Stranding 2, so you can bet she'll have some wacky characteristics, probably comparable to Jack from The Incredibles. Yeah, I just did a comparison between Death Stranding and The Incredibles, and there's nothing you can do about it. And there you have it, the wacky and wonderful story of Death Stranding from start to finish. I think this game has a very new style to it and feels more like an interactive movie than video game. I did really enjoy the story, but oh my god is it hard to understand unless you do your research. Some bits are explained well, but some are really not, and I hope this opened your eyes to a further understanding of the lore and characters ahead of a highly anticipated Death Stranding 2. If you want to know what I thought of the actual game itself, check out my Death Stranding review, which to this day is by far the longest review I've done, as there's just so much to unpack. Leave a comment below with what you thought of the story and anything Death Stranding related. Keep your eyes peeled for more reviews, analysis and spoilercasts, and why don't you leave a like and subscribe to help the channel out. For everything else Casual Gamer, keep it here. Peace and love.